What's up, investors? Chase here from the Note MBA podcast. On this week's episode, we continue our May, the month of seconds series, I guess is what we're calling it. In this episode, we have a wonderful interview with Cathie Jeffs, and finally, David Glinsky feels like he might be willing to dabble in the dark arts. Investing in seconds. After everything that we've been talking about, we dive into a bunch of stuff, including the power of being able to buy 8, 7, 10, 11 different notes when it comes to seconds, as opposed to just 1 or 2 firsts with the same amount of money. Anyway, check out this week's episode right now.
If I was a baker, right, and you called me and you wanted me to bake you a dozen cookies, and I'm like, done, but 3 of them are going to be shit. Right, like there's no way no one's gonna buy your cookies, right?
First, seconds, performing, non-performing? What the Note buyers, when it seems like you're in this business alone, know Chase, Robert, and the rest of their tribe are at it every week. They're bringing updates from their own note businesses as they work to find, fund, and finish deals. Follow along as they share their grassroots education with you, tuition free. If you'd like to know more about what they do and download the entire back catalog, check out notemba.com. Now, here are your hosts, Chase Thompson and Robert Woods.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Note MBA podcast, your home for note investing on iTunes. I am Chase Thompson, joined by David Glinsky once again. This will be 2 weeks in a row. David, super pumped to have you here, brother.
Hey. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so, right? Every time you're happy to, you're
always.
I assume it is the best part of whatever is your current day, week, month, and or year, right? Every single new episode.
How'd you know?
Listen, because I know you that well. So as we continue to just drive through the month of May, it's insane in my opinion. But as we continue to drive through the month of May, the month of seconds, here on the Note MBA podcast, I feel like I'm saying it so much that next May, we're going to have to do it again. And we'll be like, I just don't care about seconds. But with all these people talking about it, I actually have gotten really intrigued, which has been great. As we continue, as we continue to drive through the month of seconds here, we have another wonderful guest on the show, someone that I have had an opportunity to sit booth to booth next to at a couple of different events. We've broken bread numerous times now, all kinds of things. We have Cathie Jeffs. Cathie, how are you?
I am absolutely spectacular today. How about you, Chase?
I'm wonderful, as always. I personally love that right before we got started, I was trying to give you a rundown, here's our timelines. We usually try to hit in for the show and all that kind of stuff. And you just dropped the, I'll warn you, I'll talk notes all day. I love it. So everyone can just expect a 24-hour show starting now. It'll be great now. So no, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I've had a lot of opportunities to talk with you, a ton of different events. So the first thing I want to say, and this isn't necessarily an option for everybody that has now been on the show in this kind of month of seconds. Obviously with Fuquan, yourself, when people hear you and kind of get your message and your story and all those kinds of things, they should also know that depending on the note event or, if they jump on your email list or whatever, they absolutely have a chance within a matter of months and potentially depending on where they live to come shake your hand, talk face to face, get more understanding, dive a little deeper and all that kind of stuff in person, right? I mean, y'all do a ton of events, right?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we love it. It's our great pleasure to talk to people face to face.
Yeah. So, I mean, I dig the fact that we get to, interface as often as possible, as often as we get to. So that's really cool. So before we dive too deep on kind of all of the questions that I've now amassed throughout the last couple of conversations that we've had regarding seconds, can you give everybody a rundown who you are, where you've been, what's going on? How do you introduce yourself when you're in a group of new people? What do you say you do for a living,
Well, I tell them that just to sound super, super special, I tell them that I'm a partner in an investment firm.
Yes. Okay. I love that. That's perfect. I love that. That's excellent.
It's essentially what I am, right?
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting that I found fascinating is a long time ago, several years ago, somebody coined a phrase with us, and that person would be Joe Fairless, coined the phrase the Cathies. Oh. And That was several years ago. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. And what I find very interesting is that a lot of people actually know us that way now. Somehow that made its way around somewhere, that people know me and my partner Cathie as the Cathies. So
he has a fairly successful podcast himself. So it's not like it's made its rounds like necessarily completely through the underground. You know, he's doing pretty good.
He is. We've done his show twice, actually.
There you go.
And so people might know us as the Cathies. So I'm one half of the Cathies. So who am I now? I'm a member of Paper Assets Capital, PAC for short. I've been investing in notes since 2011 exclusively. It's all I do for a living. This is my job. I have tons of my own money in it, and I have been fairly successful at it. Let's put it that way.
I love it. The humility behind all. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's really good. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Like we have a lot of people. We've had Dave Van Horn's been on the show before, and he was obviously doing a ton of seconds for a long time. Now they have a mix of what they invest in. But even when he was telling kind of his story about how they got started, it was him and a couple of buddies with their own capital going out and buying a pool, and then just starting with a ton of your own money, right? Like that's not a, you get the 50-50 on, if people had it, then they could start with it. If they didn't, then, but it's good to know, right? Essentially.
Well, I have a story that I always start every single presentation with. And while I'm aware this isn't a presentation, it's an interesting story about second position notes. Mm-hmm. So if you'd like me to share it.
It's the month of seconds. I know, right?
Well, so me and Cathie both work for the same company, and she was my boss, actually. We got downsized approximately the same time, and but in a very elegant way financially. So we're trying to figure out what kind of job to buy for ourselves, because we didn't want to go to work every day anymore. So we thought we might buy ourselves a fix and flipper kind of job. And somewhere along the way, somebody whispered notes in our ear, and we got very excited. So we went to 3 meetups, and on our 3rd meetup, walked up to the guy running the meetup and said, "Hey, can you sell me 2 notes?" So as you can see, there was no analysis paralysis on our part. We were just right in there. So he sold us 2 notes for $9,400 with a UPB of about $60,000, $30,000 a piece. And the idea was we were still new. We didn't know how we were going to form our company. We didn't know what roles were going to be in what. We had never done this before. So the idea was she was going to work one out and I was going to work one out. And so I called my guy, and he says to me, "I filed bankruptcy. Don't you ever call me again." And slammed the phone in my ear. And I was mortified. Nobody's ever yelled at me like that before. And I was like, "He just yelled at me." And literally, I was very upset. So Cathie called her guy, and it literally went exactly like this. "Oh my God, I'm so glad you called. I had no idea who to pay. And by the way, can you help me reach into my 401k and pull out $10,000 to pay you the arrears I owe you?" Why, sure I can.
Do you want fries with that? You want fries with that? That sounds like a delightful situation.
It literally went exactly like that. No deviation. It was pretty much word for word that. And that man's been paying faithfully. We gave him no break on interest. We gave him no UPB break. We gave him nothing. We took his $10,000 and let him resume his payments. Okay. But that's a good story, because had we only bought the 1 note where the guy screamed at me and yelled in my ear and made me cry, I might never have gotten another note. That's why it's a good story.
Oh no, it's a great story. I'm fascinated by this idea of having essentially a note workout competition. Number one, I think that's delightful. A little like American Gladiator style of, like joust it out. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm going to do this every time because I am very bad at
it. So that's that is interesting right off the top. So like the fact that y'all obviously recognized the, strength in numbers, right? Essentially. And then went about almost figuring out strengths right off the top, right? Like granted, obviously you drew the short straw essentially, right? Like you got the guy that did anything end up happening with that deal, or was it straight scrap from there?
So because he made me cry, I put it on a shelf and I didn't look at it for a couple of years. And so go back to the numbers for a brief second. We paid $9,400 for those two notes. The second guy gave us 10 grand, made us whole right off the bat, and has been making payments since. But then that second note, a couple years later, we sold to another investor for $7,500, and thus making another 3 grand.
Okay. So, but how were you able to sell it for 75 knowing guy was a total such and such? And wouldn't work? I mean, did they end up going a different route, wage garnishment or some sort of other type scenario?
So here's the thing. He filed bankruptcy and he was no longer personally liable for that debt. But if he wanted to continue to live in his home, he would need to pay that debt because the home was still liable for it. I
see. Okay. Very nice. So they ended up, they bought it and sold it for 75, bought it for 4. And what was the UPB on it, you said?
It was about 30,000, 26, somewhere in that range.
Okay, so they still picked it up for sub 30%, or so like sub 30%.
Right.
And, you know, and had not thicker skin, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know too many people with thicker skin than Cathie Jeffs. But essentially, did you give him the rundown? Like, here's what the guy's done.
He knew it was in bankruptcy. At PAC, we disclose everything. You're always going to know everything about that note. So he knew it was in bankruptcy. We're Gemini Solutions at the time, and told him the whole story. But the reality is, all he had to do, the guy who yelled in my ear and made me cry, was a little uneducated. While yes, you no longer have to pay the debt, doesn't mean the debt is wiped. House still owes it, and if you would like to live there, you need to pay it. And once he was educated by the new owner of the note about that, I believe he had to initiate like half of closure, and then the guy finally agreed to start making payments.
Interesting. So and it being your first deal, I mean, not knowing necessarily maybe to like bring in legal so soon, you just bought it and the guy's already being a total such and such. So that's good. I really dig. That's a great story. I've got about 4 directions I want to go.
Were these two first notes firsts or seconds?
No, second positions.
Always
okay.
Seconds.
So you just started right off the gate buying seconds.
Yes, absolutely. We actually had learned pretty quickly the difference between the two and sort of got way more excited about seconds than firsts.
Why?
What exactly made you so excited?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I mean, there's a couple different aspects. The first thing is it's a numbers game, right? 100 grand, I may get 1, possibly 2 firsts. 100 grand may get me 8 seconds. So I may on the first 1 or 2, and I'm paying a higher price point. So I may or may not get a workout, and I know I'm going to have to pursue a foreclosure because 80% of the workout on a first, or the exit on a first, is through the home. So there's a numbers game there. Whereas if I get 8 seconds for that same 100 grand, let's say 3 of them are losers. I'm buying them at very low price points. The 5 that are going to be winners are going to I'm going to match what I need to make, and I'm going to cover the 3 losers, and I'm still going to make mad money. Mm-hmm. So it's really a numbers game.
So what kind of ratio have you found that works for you, at least, as far as the ones that don't work out and the ones that work out with like every 10 that you buy, per se?
So I'm going to be very honest with you, David, and tell you we've only probably actually lost money, like actual out-of-pocket loss, on like two, maybe 3 notes that we've owned.
Wow.
Because there's always a way to make money off it. Always. If it doesn't fit your business model, it fits someone's. So you sell it to them.
And so something came up in the last talk that we did with a couple of investors, Kimberly and Gabe. And Gabe had mentioned something that you had said just a second ago, which was you had a scenario where the deal didn't look like it was going to be an immediate resolution, or you knew there was potentially going to be an issue. He's had it before where, he said that maybe equity wasn't where it needed to be. So you shelve it to make sure that you're not calling attention before potentially, you might get wiped or, other things, right? Like he said, there's numerous reasons why you might need to, quote, shelve a loan.
Correct.
Which was great, very educational. He dove fairly deep into kind of why and what have you. What he didn't dive deep on, and this is where my question came from, was the mechanics. So I'll explain to you how I think it might go, and then you can say, no, that's wrong, or some variant thereof, right? Okay. So I think about it in the realm of a first, say, okay, any loan, right? But like you've got a loan, you presumably had to board it some way, shape, or form, and then you start your workout, and you find out that for a number of reasons, you have to shelve it for any number of reasons. Now, that's where it's all vague to me, because if I'm saying shelve it and I'm shelving it at the servicer I currently use, I believe it's something like $30 for just like bare bones. This is all, there's nothing there. We'll just keep everything legal. But they have like a tacked on, if it's a HELOC thing where it's like $7 to $10 or something. So potentially I'm at like $40, depending on your servicer, a month, right? For just like bare bones, right?
Can I stop you right there, Chase?
So sort of. Yes, you technically could do whatever you want, Kathy. But I want to play this out
let
because
me stop you at that particular point, because what you just mentioned is a $40 a month expense on a note that may never bring you a dime, theoretically.
Yeah.
So why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Okay. So I'm going to finish this out because that's my question. So we're at 30 to 40, and we shelved it. I mean, I think he mentioned shelving something for like 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it was a crazy amount of time. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a state like a New York, it could be even longer just from a foreclosure perspective. I mean, it's just take forever, right? So you've now got it shelved at a proper servicer, in my mind, okay? And it's now 3 years later, and you've incurred just under like $1,500 in expenses for something that might never bring you a dollar, that you say you picked up for whatever, 10 grand or something, right? So now you're over 10% spent on this one, you see what I'm saying? So
I do see what you're saying.
How does it actually work?
So at PAC, we actually do not board notes with servicers until we have a workout.
Okay. How do you manage it? How does that work?
Well, we have our own internal system.
Okay.
Where that's actually what my role at PAC is. I'm the administrator. So I actually do all the loan boarding into our system. Mm-hmm. And then the moment we get a workout, we don't collect a dime in payments from borrowers directly. The moment we have an established workout, it gets boarded with a servicer of our choice. Mm-hmm. And that way we don't have to worry about 1099s, issuing all of that, tax ramifications or any of that. But during the workout phase, it stays with us, and we do our own workouts. If we're in a state, for example, though, that requires you to be regulated or certified, such as North Carolina, then in that particular case, on that one note, we may board it with somebody just so we can sort of piggyback onto their certifications and licensing. Mm-hmm. But in most states of the union, you just work your loan, period.
Interesting. So, and that's, trying to think of the way to ask it. So that, if that were a first, would that be different? Like, is it because you're in a second lien position, there's different legal ramifications, or am I just not understanding maybe how that process works? You get what I'm saying?
No, it's exactly the same, actually. Mm-hmm. First or second is irrelevant. It is the same. So it's a question of origination. Like if it's your note that you originated as like a seller finance note,
yeah,
then you're not subject to anything but whatever you want to do, right? But if you bought a second market note originated by a bank, now you're subject to very specific regulations.
Gotcha.
Right. And to be perfectly frank as well, you'd have to own like 4,000 notes or 2,000. What was the number we heard? I think 2,000 before you even fall into that scope of requirements.
Oh, you mean? Oh, yeah. From the 2000 seems low, but that might have you might be totally on point with that for sure. I just don't remember what they said. So you're saying that essentially I grossly misunderestimated. It just seems so. I mean, because he said it so matter of factly, right? Like he's like, oh yeah, we saw it or whatever. So it's literally in your fireproof case, blah blah blah, to be appropriately managing your docs right in house and all that kind of stuff. And it is literally shelved.
It literally is. But there's a second bonus to that maybe he didn't discuss. So, like you were talking about equity. The second bonus to shelving a note is while the equity is increasing, because we know the market is reemerging all around the country, the real estate, people are buying it again. The second piece to that is, so while the equity is going up, they're making their first payment on the senior lien, which is also creating additional gap. So the window is going up and down, creating a huge gap. You understand what I mean?
Oh, no, I definitely do. And that was his point. He was saying either appreciation is going up, equity is like any number of scenarios could be happening that would get you in a good position. Yeah.
Right. So that's actually helping to increase the equity gap.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's not nearly as as like an act of Congress not to bring any sort of actual political conversation in, just for the phrase, to be able to make this all work out. And how frequent is that as a strategy?
So it's not, for us at PAC, it's not hugely a strategy that it's not something that we do a lot.
Yeah.
We make an attempt, because bear in mind, we buy a particular kind of note. And the note that we buy is where they're paying on their first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure you've heard this term on your show now for the month of seconds, emotional equity.
Yes.
Right. So we buy what that means is when you pay on your first, there's a reason you want to stay in your house. Your grandmother lives around the corner. Your best friend lives down the street. Your kids have gone to the same school for 12 years. You just put in $6,000 in landscaping. There's a reason you want to stay there because you're paying your first. There's reasons why you're not paying your second. Maybe you forgot it even existed. That's happened. A lot of people got those 80-20 loans, mm-hmm. and they forgot the 20 portion existed. They just forgot about it. So there's a lot of reasons why they don't pay the second, but they are paying the first, and that's the note that we buy. So it's a specific target.
I as a former originator of mortgages, and we wrote a bunch of appropriate, right? Like actual 80-20, like this is, like nothing was shady about it. In fact, I got into the mortgage business. A lot of people that listen to the show know, like right after everything had hit the fan, like I never even had an opportunity to write any of what was essentially the questionable paper, because all of those programs were gone when I was in the business. But it blows my mind that someone could just forget. I mean, like, are you really telling me you're having conversations with people where they're surprised? Or they're like, oh, yeah, there was this whole other thing that existed.
Well, let me tell you why. A lot of people have refinanced the 80% portion and thought the 20 was rolled into it.
Oh, so that's sort of appropriate, or at least, makes sense.
Right.
Interesting. I've got another set of questions. David, you got something else, bud?
Yeah, I was interested to ask, because I remember Kimberly saying last week that the second market is kind of drying up and it's starting to become harder to find the
I dispute that
seconds.
Sunday.
Okay, well, I remember her saying something about the seconds. It was difficult finding seconds with the people paying the firsts. Do you also disagree with that, or?
I do, actually. I mean, we do our proper due diligence. So here's the thing. You may be forced to buy a tape with 40 notes on it, and maybe only 15 of them have performing firsts. Well, that's fine. You just sell the 25 to an investor, a different investor, where that meets their business model. So you can buy tapes with 600 loans on them, no problem, and pick out the ones that work for you, for your business model, and then sell off the rest. They are out there. They are out there.
Okay.
They're not.
There's always a deal to be had.
There really is. Here's the thing. So Goldman Sachs has been buying up seconds and going crazy, partially as partially as part of their punishment from the Fed for doing what they did. So they're holding a lot of stuff. But how long do you think Goldman Sachs is going to hold it? They don't want to work it. They don't want to own real estate. They're going to sell it. They're only buying it to meet the requirements of their punishment.
And okay, so we brought up another topic, this similar topic with Fuquan. He answered it similarly but differently. He said, because someone I was talking with when we were at Paper Source essentially said what you just said. There's a ton of inventory out there. It's technically a little bit more of a mixed bag than it was before. You're not going to be able to snipe the same deals you were able to do before. But essentially, he said it a little differently, where he basically said, you're probably not going to be able to as easily get the one-off $9,000 deal, in terms of actual acquisition cost that you could before. However, if you've got the 150 to go after the 12 deals, like you mentioned, right? You get 100 grand, you can get 8, right? That is definitely still possible. Like, in that, if you bring more money to the table, you won't have to necessarily pay more, but it will get you a tranche as opposed to that one-off random one that very few people are willing to necessarily part with as much as before.
Correct. And let's say 20% of that pool is losers. You've gotten it at a good deal. You've paid a good price point for it, and you're going to make more than enough money on the 80% that aren't losers that it doesn't matter about the 20. That's why are a numbers game.
Yeah. Why do so many people struggle with, I mean, even myself probably included a little bit, but struggle with that. If I go invest in a mutual fund or stocks or these types of things, I can absolutely expect, this is why people watch the market. I can absolutely expect a certain amount of, hopefully not all, right? But like a certain amount of those stocks or a certain amount of those mutual funds aren't going to, quote, win. Now, they might not be total losers. You might get just above like inflation, right? But like, it's totally cool to have somebody say, no, I'm good. I don't want to do notes, whether it be first or second, because of the potentiality for something like a second. They've heard someone talk about seconds and say, I'm going to go buy 100 and 20, 25 of them are going to just literally be as effective as if I burned the cash in a bucket, except the bucket would have given me warmth for 10 minutes, right? But I'm going to go do stocks, and there's going to be a bunch of losers. But for some reason, there's that cognitive dissonance. What is it? Just conditioning, right? Is it just the conditioning of life of how frequently we've been told to put your money in the market?
Well, if you're asking me, okay, so I'm gonna actually answer that from a different perspective. I actually think there's less risk in notes than the market.
I totally agree with you. I'm saying, why don't people see it that way?
Well, I can't answer that because I don't see it that way. I see it as, I'm a borrower. I'm taking out now, I'm going to speak from a seconds position. I'm taking out $100,000 HELOC. That 100 grand is secured twice. It's secured by me, the human being, and the home. I'd rather have a doubly secured 100 grand than dump 100 grand in the market and wonder how much I'm going to take home tomorrow if I'm going to jump out of a roof or jump off a roof on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which can happen because people are a little nutty sometimes.
Just a little bit. So for you, is it potentially just an education thing? You, as the investor, you need to be able to overcome. You need to be able to have that conversation in a more educated and, potentially savvy way, right?
Correct. People need to know. And then, there's the inherent risk tolerance. Some people are riskier than others. Some people, let's throw that to the wind, see what comes back. And some people are like, you want me to spend $1.50 for what? No. So it's also about risk tolerance. And that's just in somebody's mind. So put those two things together, education and risk tolerance, and you're going to end up with a note investor.
I like it. So there you go, David, as a brand new investor to the bringing on all the now you have your marching orders. Go and educate and get people savvy, and you'll never want for capital. That's tremendous.
No, I love it.
I just find it generally fascinating how quickly, and I'm trying to think of a corollary. Like if I was a baker, right, and you called me and you wanted me to bake you a dozen cookies, and I'm like, done, but 3 of them are going to be shit. Right, like there's no way no one's gonna buy your cookies, right? Like I'm trying to think of a corollary where someone comes to you, Cathie, seconds only investor. In fact, you have said every time you've stepped into, we had this conversation offline, but every time you've stepped into a first position, you've tried to dabble in the first position, you've gotten beaten over the head a little bit. If I come to you as someone who's a seconds investor all the time, through and through, and you're like, I'm going to go buy 10 loans and 2 of them are going to be total crap. That is amazing. Now, obviously, you've got a track record you can show, but it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, but I'm going to make so much money on the 8. I mean, you have to bear in mind, and again, speaking from second over first, second position, our average return is 30%. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's average. Sometimes it's 90, sometimes it's 10. Our average is about 30%. That's an amazing return, right?
Yep.
So I mean, if I'm making on average 30% on the 8 winners and have 2 losers, how is that bad?
It isn't. I just find that level of brazenness to be both refreshing and a little crazy, which is how I like to live my life. Be refreshing and a little bit crazy. No, to me, it's amazing. And I think you have to be able to show, like you said, you have to be able to show the track record. You have to be able to give the actual data, right? Because if you can't just say that probably will kill it on the 8, right? Here's our pool. We just did. Here's these, right? Right. And when you can lay that out, it's just something that has been said now because we've been having this conversation for 4 weeks in a row, right? That time and again, I'm gonna. The way that we mentioned it in a previous show was the reason why Gabe actually started as a first guy, and he said, and David, you were on the call with me, so I want to make sure I'm quoting this here proper. But he essentially said he's going much heavier into seconds. He's like, no, most of my portfolio now leans that way, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And the reason was he kind of gave an answer, but essentially it came down to being a seconds investor gave him more appearances at the plate, right? To use a baseball reference. It gave him more opportunities to take a swing at a potential, good deal. That was it. That was the reason.
And that's because, you're a first buyer, right? What is the current price point on firsts?
We are picking things up at the floor right now.
Give me
average?
The floor at the top.
Yeah, I was going to say floor average right now, 50 would be sweet.
Okay.
But I say the ceiling's going to be 58 because I'm just not going above that. But there's higher for sure. I just don't buy above that.
But would I be speaking out of school to say that people are getting them for 65?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I know they are because they're buying them instead of me because they're dumb and not doing the right things. Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. So not only are HELOC mortgages generally smaller numbers,
sure,
$300,000 house, maybe get an $80,000 HELOC, but also the price point is smaller. So let's say it's 50. You're buying the first at 50 cents. How much are you spending? 150,000, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I have an $80,000 HELOC. I'm getting at 20 cents. How much am I paying? 20,000. So, or even a little less.
Yeah.
So that 25 cents. So you're going to pay $150,000 for one note that may or may not be a winner, may or may not have oil tanks in the backyard that are going to cost you another $200 to clean up. I'm going to buy a second position note where I don't care if there's oil tanks in the backyard because I'm not first position or the homeowner. And I'm only going to spend 20 for it. And I can buy 7 of those while you've got 1.
Yes. And obviously, I don't have to. I mean, I've only ever done first, and we've done very well and all that other stuff. So the best part is everyone wins. But like every time I talk to someone who does seconds, and we've talked about this numerous times on the show, we've never done one, but we're always like, oh, like, because the grass, right? Like, oh, right. That's some super sweet, grass always greener. Love it.
Chase, I'm not bashing first. First work for people, obviously. They don't work for us and our business model. I was just giving you numerics.
Oh, I know you are, and that's what I'm saying. You're always enticing me. That's the problem. It's great. It's like the tray of cookies from that shitty baker while I'm on a diet. It's even though there's probably 3 of them are going to be crap, they're all enticing, and I want all.
And if you're on a diet, that's how you should look at it. 3 are crap. Isn't that great? The other 9 are going to be the best cookie I ever ate.
Exactly. But I'm going to go buy this jumbo one, and maybe it's good. Maybe it's not good. I'm screwed. I'm now talking everyone into becoming a seconds investor, right? That's fantastic. A couple of other things that we're going to touch base on with you. You're starting / have started, I think you've probably been doing it for a while, but I guess you're getting a little more aggressive with it. The WIN, which is WIN, the Women in Notes. This is a meetup that y'all have been doing, and then did it kind of go back burner a little bit, and now you're getting really aggressive with it? Or I thought this was something you'd been doing for a while.
It is something we've been doing for about 2.5 years, but we've been doing it local meetings only.
Yeah.
And then, I guess people stopped being excited about it because you have to drive to where we are. And so we stopped getting excited about it, I'm going to be honest. And we decided to start doing it once every other month. And so it's sort of, nobody was excited about it anymore, including us. So here's the thing. I am excited about it on a personal level. I want there to be a WIN chapter in every single town and city in America. Mm-hmm. Because again, I love talking about notes and I love educating people about notes. So what we're starting is what's making it a little bit more exciting right now for everybody, hopefully, is that we are going to start finally doing webinars. We're going to jump on the webinar bandwagon. And so you don't have to be sitting with us at the Denellen Hotel sipping on a scotch. You can actually be in your own living room sipping on a scotch while you talk to us.
Delightful. And so obviously women in notes, not to discriminate in any way, shape, or form, but it's obviously primarily women. And what do you guys cover? You guys just talking business? What are y'all doing?
Wait, let me correct you on that. It's actually not primarily women. We call it Women in Notes because we love the acronym. And of course, Cathie and I do have a special place in our heart for teaching women. But men are more than welcome. We always say pants are welcome and encouraged.
Oh my, that's fantastic. Very nice, very good. So you guys are just covering the business, covering what's happening in and around y'all's area, that type of stuff?
Well, we actually don't buy notes in New Jersey. We pretty much buy anywhere but New Jersey. Yeah. So we can't really speak to the note world in New Jersey. Because we're not up with the trends in Jersey. We don't like it. Yes, we actually totally educate people. We're starting sort of a new format, which we hadn't had before. We're going to start like a 9-module format, and sort of every module builds on the next module in teaching like the overall aspect of the note business.
Sure. Very cool. And if you come in week 7, you won't know all of the things, right? Because that would have been helpful, but you won't be like completely out of sync.
Right. And we'll be doing some repetition because we're only going to have 9 modules. So like on the 10th month, if you start in week 7, you wait around for a month or 2. Month 10, you may get module 1 again.
Nice.
Or you may get a guest speaker, or, somewhere, it's just always, we're going to throw guest speakers in there. We're going to throw you in there. You're going to come and visit with us. We're going to throw, some knowledgeable experts, lawyers, that kind of thing, in the mix. So it's not only going to be the 9 modules.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I'm all about it. I think it's great. I think it continues to expand the network. Obviously, I'm sure y'all will obviously be covering a ton of second talk. If you do any first talk at all, I would just like to make a request that you tell people not to be dumb and buy first at 65%. That's just a personal friend-to-friend request. But you do you.
Absolutely.
You know?
I will ensure them that is way too much. You know, I'll tell you the reason that first don't work for us, Chase. And I'm not. And like I said, more power to you with first, because firsts are obviously a good bet. But they just don't work for us because our interest is in the homeowner and not owning the house. So we're in a first position note. I find, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, and then when you join me in my webinar, you can bring this up, is that 80% of the exit is through the property, correct?
Yeah. I mean, almost entirely. I mean, unless you get a mod or something like that. I mean, I think we've got a slightly better ratio than that, but yeah.
Right. And that's why for us, we want 80% of that to be through the borrower. We actually have taken on a couple properties, and to be quite frank, I'm annoyed by it. Like, I'm annoyed by owning this real estate. Like, who wants to deal with it?
It can definitely be. So the way that we're actually tackling it is a slightly different, or I say the way we're tackling it, we've transitioned to do it occasionally, and it's kind of working out, is essentially doing more higher value, right? So we're going the opposite, where everyone's like, yeah, my first, I'll do first in the 50,000 to say 70,000 range, and here's why, and all this other business. We've dabbled a little bit with obviously doing more expensive for all of the reasons everyone says they don't want to do them, for the reasons. We'll do them for those exact reasons. Because essentially, yeah, the yields might be a little lower, but obviously math is math, right? And which is what makes it so great, that just because I might be technically the yield on paper percentage-wise might be lower, it could very easily actually be more, right? First of all.
Right,
But you also encounter, it's different problems, different issues. Your borrowers tend to be more sophisticated. So oftentimes, just in general, as far as life is concerned, I'm experiencing a lot less people that don't even have a cell phone, things like that, where I've got to buy a burner and send it to my borrower. And I'm like, come on. So
that's actually a strategy we use, is we send door knockers to the property and with a burner phone.
Wow.
And if they answer the phone, the door knocker hands it to them, and they can speak to us right then and there.
That's
Wow.
classy. That's fantastic. But so anyway, we end up going the opposite direction, for the reasons that XYZ, right? And we tend to obviously not have to exit through the property quite as much because you get a lot more people who want to stay. Anyway, you deal with professionals faster because those people can afford professionals, attorneys and things. You just get straight to it, which is very different. You don't get you don't get as much of the runaround, I should say.
Right.
So we haven't completely transitioned there, but it's definitely something where I think we typically are able to, with both of how long we've been in the business and then also the type of investors that we have, just do slightly better, quote, better, right, properties and things. So anyway, we have the 300,000 first, and you have our $80,000 second. So it's great. Good deal.
Yeah, there's always a number you look to, right? Like,
yeah,
if somebody tries to sell us a loan with an $8,000 UPB, it's not even worth looking at.
It's just
why?
Exactly.
It's not even worth the time of due diligence.
No, right. It's essentially the same thing. And if someone sends us a first, it's the same thing. We're like, wait, what? I have no interest in having the first on a refrigerator box or whatever this thing might actually be.
Used car.
Yeah, that's not going to work. So I got a couple more questions for you. Of course, David, you chime in whenever you'd like. But is there a particular? We talked a lot of due diligence with the last show that we did with Kimberly and Gabe. They gave us kind of some really great due diligence pieces, kind of going over the difference between.
That's our forte at PAC.
Is there something that y'all do that you feel is a little different, or is just a little nugget that you can give? Like, here's something that we kind of cover, in the process, or a service, or something that y'all do that is a little bit better? Because I've heard you talk a lot about it before. So is there something that you can kind of share with people that might be looking to go towards second?
So our due diligence process really works like this. When we're given a tape, one of our business partners is an actuary. You met him at PaperSource, Al.
Yeah.
So he does all the mathematics. And so the very first thing we do with the tape is analyze it for financial worthiness of it. Not taking into account equity, not taking into account anything, just assuming everything on the face is legit What is the financial worthiness of this tape? And he'll pick out like 10 loans that are like the best of the best on the tape. And now due diligence really starts. So he'll send them to me, and I actually do full title searches at the county level on the 10. And then I'll determine, out of 10, say 6 of them are decent. Those 6 will be sent off to the next partner who runs credit reports and does pacer checks. And then maybe out of those 6, she'll end up with 3. Those 3 are then forwarded on to, we have a couple VAs that do comps for us and things. So those 3 addresses are passed off to them. And then basically what we do at that point is, let's say the tape started with 40 notes. We'll determine that 3 of them, the 3 best ones on the tape, determine a price. And then knowing if we have to buy the whole tape, if we're allowed to cherry pick, we'll just buy those 3. If we're not allowed to cherry pick and we have to buy the whole tape, we'll just put a low figure on the other 37 notes and the right number on those 3 notes and come up with a number. But we literally go to the county level, log in, do full title searches on everything. We go to Pacer. We literally open every document to ensure that the note has not been stripped. We do all of that. We have 4 people that do it, so it doesn't actually take as long as you think.
Oh, yeah. No, even with those 2 investors that we had before, they both mentioned similar, not as aggressive, obviously, if you don't have a team of 4, but essentially going to Pacer, doing all the research. Are you using a service like TLO? They mentioned that one, obviously.
Yes, we use TLO. Sometimes we get tapes. We use TLO for a couple of different reasons. Sometimes we get tapes where they haven't provided social security numbers. It's a mass tape. So just with their name, we can pull up the social security number, get our credit reports. And we also use TLO to verify occupancy because, obviously one of our main things with emotional equity is you got to live in the house. If it's a rental property for you, you don't care. So, and we're banking on emotional equity, of course. So that's important to us for occupancy. Is it owner? Is it tenant? So we use TLO for that kind of thing.
Fantastic. And how are you, last question, because they brought it up. This kind of, to me, seemed like one of the bigger pains regarding seconds, because obviously you're exiting through the borrower, so you're definitely going to have to look at things like credit and all these other kinds of things. And they said oftentimes, because I was like, oh, well, how are you pulling credit as a, being a mortgage broker for as long as I was, we would use Kroll and other types of services, and it was just second nature. Pulling people's credit was like, every day, right? Like I wasn't paying that; it was part of company costs and what have you, right? But I asked them, and they said, well, pulling credit is actually kind of a tough thing to get approved for, which obviously probably should be. And in general, you got to have some sort of infrastructure and a certain number of deals that you're pulling. Is that something y'all are pulling yourselves, or are you also relying on the seller, like they mentioned?
No, we have our own credit reports. We pull our own. We do soft pulls. We use Credco.
Okay.
But we pull credit reports as a matter of maintenance on existing borrowers. So
great. Okay, so is that a like you have a certain quantity, so you're able to justify cost, or is this something that most people can do?
No, so it's really based on it. Once you're approved, it's per credit report. So it's like,
brilliant.
Yeah, so it's like $5 per. If you get all 3 bureaus, it's $15. If you do a double, it's both husband and wife, it's $30. But it's basically $5 per individual per bureau.
Awesome, David. Any last questions, my man?
No. It seems like I'm definitely more interested than I was before in seconds.
I knew it.
Has just been.
Did
really
I do that to you, David, or were you more excited already?
You've definitely tipped me over the edge as to get even deeper into seconds.
This podcast is never going to see the light of day. We don't want any more of this. We don't want any of this content. This is terrible. So the last thing, obviously, I want you to tell everybody where they can get in contact, where they can jump on a newsletter to maybe find out more about whenever you guys are going to be holding the Win stuff. But very similarly to Fuquan, you guys also have a fund, and he mentioned that the one that they are starting has first, seconds, a little bit of real estate, like actual property and what have you. Yours clearly primarily seconds, correct?
Yeah, it's only seconds. It will be a mixture of performing and non-performing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just have to buy them that way anyway. You don't have a choice. But it's a $15 million fund, $10,000 minimum investment. And of course, we pay return on a tiered level. So like 10 to 50,000 will get you an 8% return. 50 to 100,000 will get you a 10% return. Anything over 100,000 gets you a 12% return.
Nice. And that's typical, I would say.
Right.
I mean, numbers are always kind of different, but the tiered structure is pretty typical and all that kind of stuff. We've obviously talked about on the show before, moving in that direction as well, fund-based. Ours will be competing, right? Because we'll be all firsts as opposed to you're all seconds. I feel like this is like a really great, like, I'm an NBA fan, so obviously that's kind of coming up. You got a lot of competition, but no, I think the fund is a great route to go, right? Because it allows you to do all of the things that we've talked about thus far: buy in the big pools, take advantage of the opportunities. You know, the stinkers are going to be what they're going to be, right? But then you obviously get advantage to all the winners, right? Which is pretty great.
Correct. And at a certain point, I got to be honest, you exhaust your own funds. Like all my funds are already in there.
Oh, that no question. Yeah, no doubt. Or a lot of people in first, you know, and this is a huge difference, I would say, between first and seconds. Is there's a pretty sizable, as you get more and more deals, amount of just money you just have to leave sitting, because at any given time I'm going to have 2-3 remodels, or I'm going to have some crazy expense that is going to be higher than you're typically going to experience with a second, that because you're not taking back as much property and what have you. But so that's kind of another weird thing with seconds that are first, is I'm not necessarily able to deploy as much, because we have to kind of have a war chest a little bit, right? Obviously, right. Which isn't something that necessarily is you typically don't have to deal with that in seconds. And Gabe talked about taking deals back and turning them into rentals and other types of things, which is definitely possible. But, it all depends on your model.
It annoys us. Like, we've just done that, and it annoys me. Like, I don't want to do that.
Oh, man. You got to go listen to his. He was like glowing reviews, right, David? He was all about it.
Yeah, well, but again, it's what you're interested in. I don't want to own real estate. I don't want to take anybody's property. I just don't want it.
Can you keep your property? Just give me a check. That's all I need in my life. That's what I want in my life.
When your water heater blows up in the middle of the night, you need to worry about that, not me.
I love it. Very cool. Well, let us know. Obviously, everything we've talked about, resources, links, everything that Cathie's about to give you will be in the show notes over at notmba.com. But let everybody know where they can reach out to you, send an email, go to a website, whatever the case may be.
Spectacular. So our website is paperassets.capital.com. We also you have access to our PPM right there under the Invest tab. On meetup.com, you can find us WIN!
Ooh.
Women in Notes. And we actually just started a DC chapter with Martin Science, which is pretty exciting for us. And we actually drive down to DC to host that once a month, which is why I was saying we're kind of getting the excitement back to it. And I'm always excited. I love talking to people. So that, as far as finding us, you can email us at info@pacdesk.com. P as in Paul, A as in Apple, C as in Charlie, D as in Dog, E as in Edward, F as in Sam, K as in Kite. Is that too much?
I like to think our listeners are a little more sophisticated, but I'm okay with it. We're leaving it. It's good.
Well, no, because you'd be amazed when I say Pack Desk, people sometimes think Pack, P-A-C-K.
Oh, sure, the Pack. Yes.
Yeah, it's
the
Pack
Paper
Desk.
Assets Capital. I mean, listen, we've got a sophisticated bunch that listen to this show. Thank you.
I hear you, brother.
No, listen, I will say I'm very jealous of you. You're just like, oh, we opened up a DC chapter. We'll just drive down there. Living in Texas, I don't just drive down to anywhere. Everywhere is just another Texas. Just another place in Texas.
Because you're in Austin.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm in San Antonio, actually. So it's even more. I'm going to go up to get, it's literally the worst. I don't get to have all this state to state gallivanting about. It's wonderful.
That's why you're technophile. That's why you love it so much.
Exactly. That's why I'm glad you guys are sharing the webinar bit. That is really great. Like I said, I appreciate it very much, Cathie, for coming on. David, as always, brother, I do appreciate it. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be continuing our month of seconds, May, the month of seconds, next week. Very excited about that. So thank you guys so much for being here. As always, everything that we've talked about today will be in the show notes over at notmba.com. If you have not already, head over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, and of course, subscribe. And remember, as always, be sure to tell 5 other people you know this week about the Note MBA podcast. We'll catch you guys next week. Thanks.